In many ways, we're living through the Second Gilded Age. To gild something means to coat something in gold. The Gilded Age refers to the era from 1870s to 1900, where there was rapid economic growth, massive inequality, industrialization, and immense political corruption. I want to talk a little bit about what that age looked like and how it's similar and different from today. The Gilded Age comes from a Mark Twain book from 1873, where he writes this term as a satire, that something that appears prosperous and golden, but on the inside is rotten. That something looks beautiful, but really deep down it's full of corruption, inequality, and social problems. Mark Twain saw America as that. He saw the worker exploitation, and he saw the flaunting of wealth. And that juxtaposition is what led him to term it the Gilded Age. The Gilded Age was marked by immense economic growth and industrialization. We had the rise of the change of the American economy from an agrarian economy to an industrial powerhouse. We had the rise of factories and steel mills and railroads being built at crazy levels of productivity. That created extreme wealth. We saw the rise of robber barons, another term for a business tycoon who amassed immense fortunes, like Andrew Carnegie, the steel titan, John Rockefeller, J.P. Morgan, and other manufacturing titans. Meanwhile, the vast majority of people lived in absolute abject poverty. We had poor working conditions and slums in our inner cities. An economist termed it conspicuous consumption, people flaunting their wealth while others are living in abject poverty. Those economic business tycoons also wanted the political power to back it. And so we saw a rise of political corruption and corporate influence. So in inner cities, we saw the spoil system replace merit-based hiring in government, where friends of people who are in business would take positions in government and create what was corrupt practices. Big business ended up controlling government through the spoil system. Tammany Hall is the best example. Boss Tweed was this political boss, and in urban cities like New York and across the country, you saw these political systems being built around corruption. There were also a businesses crushing competition at the expense of the people and consumers. So, for example, the trust and monopoly of one of the trusts and monopolies of the day was Standard Oil, which controlled 90% of the oil business at the time. That led to controlling the means of production. So you saw long hours, low wages, unsafe conditions, child labor, and no protections for the worker. That led to labor backlashes and major strikes like the Haymarket riot and the Pullman strike. And big business didn't have patience for this, of course, and wanted to control the power. And so there was violent crackdowns on these protests. The way that they were able to do this was because there was an immense inflow of immigrants, mostly from Southern and Eastern Europe at the time, that allowed them to have this growing workforce of cheap labor. There was no workforce protections, no labor laws at the time, so they could get away with it. These cities grew as a result of it, and so you had this rise of urbanization and tenements and overcrowding that led to sanitation problems and diseases being spread. All of these things, the political corruption, the monopolies and trusts, the economic inequality, the urbanization, all of that led to the rise of populism and the progressive movement from 1900 to 1920, where you saw antitrust laws like the Sherman Antitrust Act be enacted, all sorts of labor unions started rising up and people started organizing. The Populist Party was a political party that led to a ton of these reforms for labor rights. And as a result, there were regulations that were put in place. So how's this similar and different from today? Well, first, most of our corporate consolidation is not occurring in heavy industry. It's happening in technology, right? So you have the rise of Google, Meta, and that, you know, it's not heavy industry and manufacturing. In addition, we have more regulations today from that progressive era that have only been building, and so in many ways, like things that didn't exist in the Gilded Age exist today. Think minimum wage laws, workplace protections, antitrust enforcement, even though the antitrust enforcement is pretty light. That said, there are a lot of similarities today, and it's worth mentioning them because we should learn from our history. One, there is an extreme wealth concentration today in America. The top 1% has amassed an enormous share of wealth. And with that, the richest 1% and the corporate entities that they made their money through control our politics. Corporate power and monopolies have led to political influence, dark money, and the inflow of money into our political system to wield power. We've also seen the beginning of backlashes. There have been labor strikes and the increase in unionization under the Biden administration. For the first time in a while, we saw Starbucks and Amazon and the Hollywood actors guilds all starting to push back against corporate exploitation. So we're starting to see that. The big difference between the original Gilded Age and today's Gilded Age is that the original Gilded Age led to the Progressive Era and all the backlash. And the big question today is, will that backlash occur now? Will we step into the moment? Will there be a similar reckoning for the people to voice workers' rights?